You sound good and you look good. What is happening, my friend?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to be. Well, I had an echo there. That was crazy.
Well, maybe you are you're thinking the same thing twice.
Oh my God, I can barely get through one thought at a time.
What was the echo? Was it
On your voice?
Oh,
So I don't know. That was weird.
maybe you were just dreaming about me.
You ever heard the weather guy on the Today Show? When he goes Sunday, and it has that echo on it. Sunday.
Is that who's that? Al Roker?
Al Roker. Yeah.
What a gig that is.
To be the weatherman?
I mean, that guy's got to make millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, he's been actually doing the weather on the Today Show recently because the gal that typically does the weather on that show got pregnant for like the 10th time, and she's been out.
So he has to work.
Yeah, he has to actually do the weather.
I think he has some type of formal training or whatever you get to be a meteorologist. Is that what it is?
Meteorologist, I guess so.
Because think about it. I looked this up one time, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And you see these newscasters, like go all the way back to these fucking cockamamie newscasters here like in L.A. You remember the guy, Dallas Raines?
Yeah.
Is he still on TV?
Yes, and he looks absolutely insane all the time.
He kind of looked like Trump before Trump, like really orange and tan, right?
Yeah, he still looks like that.
He's got to be
some of these guys need, at a certain point, some of the local news people need to get on radio and off of TV.
And he's at that point.
He's definitely at that point. He's just crazy looking. I mean, and then his thing, his style, his radio voice thing has gotten like
what is
crazy over the years. Yeah, I'm Jealous Rains and I've got the weather. You know, it's like, come on, dude, relax a little bit. And then of course you've got the slew of what is it in the morning? I mean, I know it's marketing. So they got weather girls that are
skimpy dresses,
skin
big
tight.
tits.
Yeah, what is the deal? I mean, I get it. I understand why they do that, but
of course,
it's like it's a competition between the local news stations to see how sexed up they can get their weather.
It's almost laughable, right? Like in this day and age, you can check the weather on your watch, on your phone. You're not watching TV to check the weather to see what you're going to do and not do. It's not here in California.
As far as we come with the,
how far did you come?
Well, today quite a ways. As far as we've come, as far as women's rights and equality and stuff, I mean, we're about to put the first black woman on the Supreme Court. The most space sexist, misogynistic tendencies, live on in the local newscast.
But these broads,
nobody seems to care.
Well, they're taking these jobs. I mean, assuming they want these jobs.
I don't think anybody's forcing them. I'm sure they pay them well. So.
But do you think? Because here's where I was going with this on the Dallas Raines thing and the Al Roker. I think those guys had formal training in whatever you need. I mean, what's the degree?
They're all claimed to be meteorologists,
right? And so that was something you needed back in the day in the 60s, when you were applying for a job on one of the 3 news networks, and you said, I can interpret, what the data says. I can give you an accurate forecast, not just the pain and the arthritis in my knees telling you it's going to rain, but I actually know what this shit says.
Yeah.
But nowadays, these broads in LA, do you think they're trained at all, or are they just from Central Casting?
They all say they're meteorologists.
Can that be true?
They all say they have these degrees and stuff. So
how can that be true?
Central Casting. I just have a hard time imagining that any of them are actually sussing through weather information to put together a 7-day forecast.
Exactly.
It's just got to be coming to them up on the screen. I mean, so they're good at standing in front. I mean, it would be difficult to stand in front of a green screen and put your hand in the right place. And, here across Orange County, and then their hand goes out and it gets magically right in front of Orange County on the screen. They can't see that. I mean,
you think that's difficult?
I think that's hard. Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think it takes a college degree, but
yeah, you know what it takes is a couple of scenes in the director's chair, practicing behind closed doors and getting it right a few times. Put your hand where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, there you go. So, I must have spilled water into the charging port. They call it the lightning port on my phone. Because in my vehicle, there's a lightning cable that I use to charge the phone, but it also is the way that vehicle connects to the phone for the entertainment stuff, right? So typically on the way here, I listen to some really highbrow NPR political podcast or something on the way here, or minimally music from my music
from your youth.
Nothing. I could get nothing. It was
just FM, you and your thoughts and your echoes.
FM radio all the way here, because when I put the charging cable in there, it said there was water in the lightning.
It actually
port.
said that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Message came on, because I think I was carrying it in the same hand as my Yeti cup, and some water splashed out of the top into the port.
Well, you're kind of all fumbles because you spilled when you got here too.
That's what rushing around does for me. So then I hit this traffic. So I wasn't really on time to get here on time, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. There was a crash up ahead, and my time, I was 1 minute ahead of the time I was supposed to be here, and then magically it was 30 minutes past the time I was supposed to be here on my arrival time. I'm like, whoa, what the hell?
Well, I won't judge you, my friend.
Thank you.
But what's happening? I know you didn't listen today, but you said NPR?
Yeah, NPR, National Public Radio.
Anything good happening there?
Well, I didn't listen to it, so
I know not today you didn't, but
well, here's the thing, right? So on there, they have their people that have kind of been, especially on the political stuff. So I don't know if you know who Nina Totenberg is, but she's a longtime NPR. What's the right word? She's
contributor.
Yeah, she's a contributor, but she's the like the Supreme Court, the person that covers the Supreme Court for NPR. So she was, of course, on television yesterday talking about the Biden, the potential for President Biden to nominate the first black woman to be on the Supreme Court, a pledge he made during the campaign at the behest of Jim Clyburn, the African American senator that is a pretty close ally of his. He's the one that told Biden, you better make this pledge. He was losing the
This was during the campaign?
This was during the campaign. He was totally losing the black vote. His numbers were sliding. He was in, where was it? Was it South Carolina, North Carolina, wherever the hell it was? And he was doing a speech, and so Jim Clyburn kept saying, hey, are you gonna make this pledge or not? And he was a little bit hesitant. His people were saying, don't do it. Don't do it now. Maybe do that, but don't announce it today. Here.
How early on in the campaign was this?
This was when it turned for him, right? When he was really kind of lagging, and then he made this announcement at this campaign rally, and then his numbers picked up, and that's when he had a really good showing. I think it was South Carolina. And he had a really good showing in that primary, and it was no looking back from there.
And what you're referring to, of course, is the news that Justice Breyer announced his retirement,
right,
which will grant Biden the opportunity to submit a name for an appointment.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, do you think McConnell has the chonies to try to delay?
Can they delay it for 3 years? I don't think so. I mean, I don't remember that part about him, committing to nominate a black woman. It's all over the news now. Right. So there's 3 names, right? And they're all 3 black women?
Well, there were 2, and then there's been an additional one. I think that last name is Childs. The names aren't burned into my brain yet. I think the first name of one of them is Katanja. Yeah, I think so. I don't remember the other one.
What are they all, like lawyers or judges now?
Judges, lawyers, yeah. I think all 3 of them are. One is a nominee for some kind of appellate court seat right now. That's the new one, Childs. So it would be unusual for someone who's already in the nomination process to be pulled out of that process and put in the Supreme Court. But her name is on the list.
You got to be pissed off if you're her, right? Like, it's probably a pretty good opportunity to be considered for the appellate court position, and then all of a sudden your name is tossed into the hat for the Supreme Court. You got to be like, fuck.
Well,
bad timing.
This whole thing's interesting to me. I wasn't really following the court appointments during his first year for Biden thing. So he has successfully nominated over 40 judges,
federal judges.
Yeah, and that's pretty phenomenal. And
let me just stop you right there. So those got through confirmation?
Yeah,
no issue.
No, they've had, because there's no way, if all the Democrats vote together, there's no way to stop an appointment. or a nomination.
Do you know
And
how much?
Some of them have had bipartisan.
That's what I was going to ask. So it doesn't sound like much opposition from the Republicans.
On any of the 40, no. I think some of them were straight party line votes, but some of them weren't.
What do you see happening with the Supreme Court?
It should be a straight party line vote.
You think?
Yeah, I think that all the Republicans will. I mean, one of the nominees, Katanja, I think, was her previous appointment was a bipartisan, vote, confirmation. But who knows, right? I mean, already it's been, you get I don't know how much you've been watching. You said you've seen it on the news. So there's a whole bunch of crap coming from the right now that this is outrageous, that Biden would limit the selection to only black women, that's unprecedented, blah, 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 blah. It's just nonsense, right?
Well, that's funny you say that because, I mean, here's what my thought about that. We're clearly at a point where we need to do this. I understand all the reasons why we need to do it. But isn't it fucking crazy that white people in this country have fucked things up for so many hundreds of years that we're at this point where we have to do it? And here's the parallel. Like Biden can say that, and it has all that he will nominate a black woman, and it has all the gravity that it should, and I think it does need to happen. But do you think you could say the same thing, like if he said we need to nominate a gay man to the Supreme Court? Like, could you say that now and have it have the same understanding that I think it does by saying we need to appoint a black woman?
I think that's a good question. I don't really know the answer. I really have to think that one through a little bit. I'm not sure I see the impetus to put. I mean, there may be gay people on the court already. I don't really know.
But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The argument from the Republicans is rooted in all the evils that come from the Republicans by making that comment. However, if you just look at it for what it is, could you go in another tangent? Like, you couldn't say we have to nominate a gay person or we have to nominate a one-legged person or anything else. You can only say in this moment in history, in this moment in time, it has to be a black woman, and that's okay. And it is by me. I'm not disputing it.
Yeah.
But isn't it crazy that we as humans have fucked things up so much that that's where we are?
Well, I guess I don't know. I guess I can agree with that. I do want to point out that, of course, there's nothing unprecedented about this, right? It was Ronald Reagan, the first woman on the court. He made a campaign. His numbers were so bad, his approval numbers with women, since he had been a vocal opponent of women of the NRA, not NRA, the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, that still hasn't passed. He had been very vocal about being against that, and so this was during his presidency.
Who did he appoint?
He appointed Sandra Day O'Connor.
That's right. We looked it up one time on the podcast. I already forgot.
So. Yeah. So, it was interesting. And so, I mean, you break these glass ceilings one way or another, right? So, I mean, could Obama have appointed a black woman? Nominated a black woman, and if it's so, why didn't he? And my guess would be he didn't for a number of reasons. One, that because he was the first black president, it would look almost like if you were nominating your daughter or something.
You think so?
Wait a minute. Trump did that. That's right. His children were all advisors.
You think he thought about that?
Well, I'm sure he did. I mean, the only nomination he made, right, was would he put Sotomayor? No, he was
now
it
you're gonna
just
make me
Merrick,
look it up again?
Was it just Merrick Garland?
No, he got one through, I thought.
Did he? So that last try, Merrick Garland certainly, was not a black woman.
Right.
So I don't know. I find it interesting. But, I mean, it's obviously politically expedient for Joe Biden, and comes at an opportune time for him, since his commitment to voting to voting rights legislation looks like it's hitting a block wall. And so that's going to cost him with black constituency. But this will go a long way toward getting him back in the good graces of that part of his constituency.
Maybe he didn't. I don't see that he got one through.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot.
Oh, wait, here he did. Never mind.
Who? Somebody I can't remember the name of.
Well, these are Kagan and Sotomayor.
Kagan, he got both of them on.
Yeah.
Kagan, okay.
And he nominated Garland, and that didn't happen.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Sotomayor is Hispanic.
Yeah. And
woman.
she's a woman.
So, when they asked RBG how many women should be on the Supreme Court, her answer was always 9.
Did they ask her that?
Yeah. She goes, "What?" Because
there's something to be said for that, though.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of data actually about women in leadership roles. Whether it's Fortune 500 companies, small business analytics, but there is data that shows that maybe by a small margin, but that women leadership actually have better results than when it's under the helm of a man.
Okay.
And listen, I'm not throwing our side under the bus, but
our team.
I mean, if you probably in a scenario of a court, right, the Supreme Court, 9 justices sitting in a room, listening to arguments, and their job is to come out with the answer to solve the problem. I think 9 women would be able to do that more effectively than 9 dudes. Don't you think? There's got to be a bunch of dick slinging and other machismo in there. Wow. I'm just thinking of parallels to our own industry, our own work, our own.
Are there 3 women on the court now?
Now,
or just 2? Coney and Sotomayor.
Yeah, I think so. No, Kagan's still there, right?
Is Kagan a woman?
I believe.
Is that a woman?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know. I need to see the picture of the Supreme Court, right? So interesting. I mean, it doesn't really help to address the imbalance now between liberals and conservatives on the court. We would think that the black woman nominee will be more liberal than conservative. I think that's part of the calculus for Biden to choose. So
I think it's optics too. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. That if you go back to where he was asked to make a pledge during his campaign to do that, because he did something similar with his VP pick. He said early on, it will be a woman. So he already made that distinction that no matter what, if there are good qualified, male or non-binary VP candidates, they're not it. It will be a woman.
Yeah, I think so. I think that part of his agenda is to get as far as appointments go, one way or the other, or picks. So I think that Kamala Harris, just as a woman, as a vice presidential, as a vice president, and then of course a woman of color, just part of the program for him. And I think that's part of what he thinks needs to happen to kind of correct, some of the imbalance of so many white males in these positions.
I am increasingly more frustrated with Harris and almost putting her at the same level as AOC.
Why don't we get her on the Supreme Court?
I don't know. Is she qualified for that?
She is. Yeah, she's got the qualifications.
But then we'd be stuck with her for life.
She would never. Yeah. Well,
do you think she would look at that as a demotion?
Well, tell me why are you more frustrated with?
I just can't stand anything she says.
What's she doing?
And I said this to you last week, that the Democrats are fucking it up as far as their strategy and their messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, let them fail. That's good for me. I hate their policies. But, I just think that she in particular, I cited to you last week that, they're missing the boat on the more important issues. You and I, we have our ear to the ground. We know what the American people want as far as solutions and all of the things that will make this country better.
Yeah, it's like I told Debbie this morning. I go, listen, I know what people want. She goes, oh, you represent. I go, I represent the thoughts of all Americans.
That's right.
And she's like, oh, you think you represent? She goes, you're a fucking legend in your own mind.
Hey, listen, you have to have the confidence and the gravitas to do that. So, but she just bugs the fuck out of me. And a lot of
I never think about her ever.
I see the news articles about her and the things I see on Twitter, all the things that she is responsible for putting out there. In other words, this is the message that she wants you to see and hear about.
Well, that's your bubble. You've done a lot of anti-Harris twittering and or tweeting, and so you are seeing a lot of stuff about her in your feeds, one way or the other. I bet she's all over.
But I'm also looking for things that she's doing and saying. I'll give you an example. One thing that clearly
she's the vice president. She's not doing much, like all vice presidents.
I know, but she could be quiet, and she should be quiet, and just
she's been quiet.
She's not. One thing that she's very passionate about happens to be, I guess, lead in drinking water. You know, like the whole Flint, Michigan thing.
Yeah.
And nobody wants lead in the water, and that's bad. But is it the biggest issue? Like, if I didn't say that to you, would you have thought that we still have lead in the water?
You know what? I do actually know about that issue, and here's my question for you. I'm not going to say the city, but if the drinking water that your children were being exposed to had lead in it, wouldn't it be the most important issue to you? I mean, I
don't know, maybe, but how? So let me. How big of an issue is it really?
Well, here's what lead in the water. Here's what the issue is with lead in the water. It is the most important issue, and the main victim of that situation is children.
Yeah,
developmentally, stunts them.
No doubt, of course.
And so yet it is not being eradicated. It doesn't appear to be anybody's priority. And the main reason is that it mostly affects poor black families. And so when that's the situation, even though it may get some foothold in the news for a short period of time, it goes away and is forgotten, and then it becomes the priority. It does not continue to receive the priority because it's not fixed.
I understand all that, and right. I'm not trying to diminish the problem. And
sounds.
No, but here's again, this has to do with kind of the.
I'm trying to save you from yourself.
You don't have to save me. Just the optics of it. In other words, this is something that she's passionate about, and I don't mean for this to be a sexist thing or whatever, but you know how I guess historically it's all been first ladies have passion projects, whether it was like Michelle Obama was the Get Fit thing.
She has something to do with children.
And Melania's was like anti-bullying or whatever. Nancy Reagan, the war on drugs.
Satanic Christmas.
The point is that Kamala's messaging sounds less VP-like to me and more first lady to me, like a passion project. Like, again, of course it's important. Of course it needs to be solved. Maybe she's picking it up because she has influence as a VP versus whatever local authorities are not doing their jobs. But it's the optics. She's not balancing it with the more important problems in this country. Well, inflation, I brought it up.
Well, I think that she sees the role, and I think most vice presidents see the role as a support role for the president.
And that's not any of the things he's talking about.
Well, but here's the thing. I mean, she's fully supported the Build Back Better and, the voting rights and these things. She's totally on board with all of those things. This lead and the water thing, I don't know. I haven't personally heard her speak to that, but I don't follow her stuff in social media. Like, I don't follow what she says on Twitter, and so I really haven't heard it. So
I think she's struggling.
That might be your impression that that's a big thing for her more than. And I don't think that if you did a poll, hey, what's the most important issue that Kamala Harris is dealing with as vice president? Lead in the water. I don't think that's going to be.
You know what? She wouldn't even know. She's struggling to find her identity. She's struggling to find what her role really is. Is she supposed to be a support role and get behind the president's agenda?
You know what her most important function is? That
What?
she is fulfilling completely, 100%.
Yeah, she's picking up the briefcase in case Biden drops dead.
She remains alive.
That's
in
right.
case Biden drops dead.
That's exactly right.
So
she'll be, trying to clean the water, and she won't be able to find the nuclear codes.
I don't think she's gonna run for president, no matter what happens. I don't see him running for president in 24.
He can't, right?
I mean, he can, but I'm hoping not. I mean, I just don't think I want an 82-year-old president, regardless of who he is.
I mean, the most catastrophic thing that could happen, maybe not the most, but here's a doomsday scenario for you. He dies on the job between now and the next 3 years. She automatically becomes president. Mm-hmm. And then what happens to the VP spot? Does she pick? Does she have the sole authority to put?
I think she's going to pick a vice president. Yeah, I think so.
We should know this.
Yeah, we should. I think
as good citizens.
Well, let's think what happened. I mean, Ford was a vice president for Nixon. Nixon, well, he was the second vice president for Nixon. Spiro T. Agnew was the first, the most corrupt politician in history. He was gone. Ford was the VP, right? And then Nixon resigned. Ford became president. And then who was Ford's vice president?
I don't know.
Some wingnut. Oh my God! It was somebody really bad. Wow, I don't know. We'd have to. I don't know. I'm not 100.
I don't either.
Really sure what.
Isn't that crazy? We don't know the answer. But just think about it. That is not an impossibility.
Well, I mean, it is of no concern to me.
It's not
that if she becomes president, I don't think that matters. I think she would be fine. And then that would be that thing would be done. Okay, now we've had a president, even if it was not elected in a general election. Would she win re-election or
Absolutely
something?
Not.
It seems doubtful to me.
What's a worse scenario?
She doesn't have good polling numbers now.
She's terrible. She's a bad communicator. She seems out of touch.
Unlike Biden's is down in the high 30s or something, which is terrible.
Is that lower than Trump ever got?
Not lower than Trump, but it's not really good for a Democratic president. But there's been a lot of stuff going on, and like you said, the messaging has been kind of off base. Lots of time to turn all that around. So it's very possible that his numbers go back up to being high. I mean, George Bush was in the toilet with his approval rating till 9/11, and then if you want to,
he was never that low, was he?
He was pretty bad. I mean, he was nothing. He was nothing, and then 9/11, then it was like 75%. So that's pretty hard to beat. Of course, it went back down, but I just don't think it matters that much. Listen, Biden had a couple of jobs to do, and he's done them already. Plus, you may or may not agree with this, but I saw the numbers this morning. We are at a 37-year high as far as gross GDP goes, and it's in the last year of Trump's, the GDP was negative.
I hate these statistics.
So, yeah, well, I mean, it's impressive. Look at it on a graph.
It's also misleading.
Well, I mean,
this is the other part of the messaging.
The economy is strong, and there's nothing misleading about the GDP.
Here's what's misleading, and it's another part of the messaging that Kamala always touts about how great the Democrats are doing, the jobs growth since 2020.
Listen, the economy is always better under Democrats than it is Republicans.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Well,
but here's the problem. Well, it was great under Trump.
It was in the toilet under Trump.
It ended in the toilet under Trump because of COVID, but it was great for 3 years, and not because of Trump either.
The 3 years prior to being in the toilet, it was half of what it is right now.
That's
not great.
Well, listen, that doesn't mean it was bad. It was great.
It was
where it was.
It was lower than almost all the GDPs for the years prior to his time in office. Was not great economy. It was just fictitious. It was good Wall Street, but
first of all,
Main Street was not good.
GDP is a combination of all goods and services. The value of that, right? Gross domestic product.
Right.
Well, when prices of shit go up, of course that number goes up. Yeah. So we're experiencing massive. And so I'm not totally disagreeing with you, but the Trump economy was better than where it left off under Obama. In other words, it kept this upward trend. And it wasn't because of Trump.
Say it again now? What was that last statement?
I said that the economy continued to grow, and it was better under Trump than where Obama left it. It continued an upward trend. And I'm not saying Trump gets credit for that.
Yeah, he doesn't.
But are you telling me that
Bush
after
took the economy into the absolute gutter, caused the depression or recession, whatever you want to call it, 2008? That was all on Bush, all. And when Obama came in, he inherited the worst economy since 1929.
Mm-hmm.
And he drove it back up. And I don't know. I'd have to look. I mean, it depends what the measuring stick is, but Trump did nothing except be there, and he did nothing to make the economy better.
The only thing he did
was better during his first 3 years.
That's right.
Because of the previous 8 years of Obama. Nothing to do with Trump. And then
that's mostly
he managed to drive it into the toilet.
That's completely false. So it was mostly true, then completely false at the end. Here's
that's one of the better assessments of one of my theories from you that I've ever gotten.
Here's what I'll say about that.
Yeah.
I agree with you regarding Obama's work in his 8 years and driving the economy back up from where it was under Bush.
Mm-hmm.
The only influence Trump had in that is that he wasn't Hillary. And we've talked about this before. And remember, this is my opinion anyway, there was this fear factor of Hillary becoming president. And so immediately after the election when Trump won and not Hillary, there was a massive bump in the stock market and a jolt to the economy. And I think it was all because of the psychological fear factor. It's not because of any work Trump did. In other words, it was almost instantaneous. And of course, Trump didn't have any time to make that happen. He rode the wave, no doubt about it. And he touted that every opportunity he got. But conversely, the economy under his watch collapsed because of COVID. And that's not his fault either. That was a completely unforeseen, uncontrollable event. And the reaction to it globally is what caused the economy. It wasn't a systems failure, if we're being honest.
You can't give him the credit for the previous 3 years.
I understand.
Which he had nothing to do for, and then exempt him from the blame. It happened on his
watch. You can do this. You cannot give him the credit, which I'm attempting to do, for the previous 3 years, and you can also not hold him accountable for COVID because it wasn't a systems failure.
That's fine, but this is in response to the nonsense coming out of the right now about how bad Biden has been for the economy.
I get you.
That is patently not true.
Have you not heard me defend Biden?
Yeah, and it is just simply misinformation that the economy has gotten worse under Biden. That is ridiculous.
Well, I haven't heard that, and I certainly wouldn't agree with that. But here's the point that I push back on that I can't stand.
Republican.
When the Democrats tout their work on the economy, they start the baseline at the pandemic, which is bullshit. We've created X many jobs since the pandemic. The unemployment rate is down since the pandemic. That's not a fair baseline. Go back to where it was before. I'm sure there's improvement, but is it at the rate that they're citing? Is it 500,000% increase from 2020?
After a year of the Biden administration, unemployment has gone from one of the historically worst
where's the starting numbers
point? Into under 4%. Well, what was it? Was it 20%?
Right. So why was unemployment? Here's the most important question. Why was unemployment at the start of Biden's presidency at one of the worst points in history? Because his fucking party cratered the economy.
No, it wasn't his party.
It was. It was largely democratically controlled.
Well, then okay, so was it Obama's fault that the economy in 2008 when he became president was completely underwater and fucked up? And
no,
okay,
that was largely because of banking and knee-jerk wrong reactions to how to solve the financial crisis. So Obama inherited that. I'm with you.
Look, I think I can agree. I think I can agree with your assessment that most of this has little to do with the president, no matter who it is. But here's the thing that I'm trying to speak in response to the constant bell ringing from the conservatives, from the right, from Republicans, however you want to name that group. Currently elected Republicans in holding elected office, they only, again, they have no platform, they have no goals, there's no plan.
Don't. It's
right?
So funny.
All they can do is talk about, how bad shit is. And so now, after the year mark for the Biden presidency, they want to talk about how bad the economy is. And that statement in and of itself is just patently not true. The economy is robust. Unemployment's under 4%. It's as good as it gets. Inflation is high right now. And, that too has nothing to do with him, right? There are the supply chain issues and things, which again has more to do with the pandemic than anything else. And so I'm just saying that, hey, if you want to assess how the economy's doing, you have to look at what it is right now. And right now, the economy's great.
Yeah. So Democrats are being very misleading about their statistics. I don't agree with the result. The economy is good, but they are very misleading in their messaging for the reasons I said. But you're right. The Republicans are like little fucking school children that their attacks are just ridiculous. I see what's going on out there.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad.
They really don't have any good rebuttals. They don't have any statistics or examples they can cite as to why they're saying what they're saying.
Republicans?
Yeah, it's really kind of,
they just make it up out of whole
kind
thought.
of. It's really kind of bad what's happening.
Well, listen, they have adopted. It's just, again, I mean, we've talked about this so much. The Republicans have just adopted a policy of just making shit up and saying whatever they want. They just, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I'd like to listen to both sides and try to give each their due, except there is no due credit I can give anything I hear out of the Republican side of things for almost, I can't even remember how long it's been. Certainly
it's because all of the thinkers on the Republican Party have abandoned the party.
Well, I guess, I don't know. Where are they all at? The Heritage Foundation?
Who knows?
Have they all become chiropractors?
What I see is, this goes back to the two-party system, and I think so many more people are like you that want to see that system intact because maybe it's the best way forward. But I think a lot of Republicans who might be, and I can't even name them, honestly, but let's say there are some middle-of-the-road, level-headed thinkers in the Republican Party, maybe historically names that we could come up with. They're afraid to leave the party because there's no viable alternative for them. They think, well, I've got to stay here and continue to influence the party back to the center so we can, make shit happen, but I can't abandon the party. Clearly, I wouldn't go to the Democratic Party, but I can't go independent because I have no chance for victory there.
You mean the Republican?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wish I could even think of a name on the Republican side. I can think of plenty that have left.
Well, I always say a guy like Kasich, however you say his name.
Yeah, Kasich.
Ohio governor, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what he's up to now. Maybe he's fishing all day long. I have no idea what he's doing. Is he still in politics?
I've seen him on TV not too long ago.
But he was a guy that, was a Republican official, elected Republican Party governor of a state. He ran for president. He sounded pretty level-headed to me. I didn't look up his life story. I don't know what he's about. But where's a guy like him now? What's he saying? What's he doing? Has he abandoned the party? Has he doubled down on the Republican rhetoric? But that's a voice of reason, I would say. Colin Powell recently passed away.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He never abandoned the party, right?
He took that other alternative.
Yeah, going up to the stars.
As your chap would say. Yeah, I don't know. I think that he was, I think he spent the last part of his political career regretting, having bought into the huge lie regarding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and being strongly responsible for that war taking place. Imagine the guilt that he had to deal with over that, not only for the American lives lost, but for the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives. I mean, when it comes down to it and you're thinking about this, and I don't think you think about it like that. I think you just, I think if you're involved in a decision to go to war as a politician of any type, I don't envy that position. But I would think that there's always, at some point, you're going to sit and think about it, right? And if you sit and think about it and you feel like the cause was justified, that's how you're going to deal with it.
Right.
If you find out that you were on the wrong side, and played an extensive role in the decision to go to war, on the back of a lie that you were,
but that's different.
Too silly not to understand.
Finding out,
I could see it. from here. I knew it was a fucking
but
lie.
Even some of your heroes didn't know.
But
see, finding out it was a lie is different than knowing it was a lie to begin with.
Well, finding out it's a lie when and realizing that you should have known. Here's the thing: there was zero proof. So, I mean,
it didn't pass the smell test from the beginning.
I think that, and I think he was quoted as saying how much he regretted that whole situation.
That's probably true,
right?
But don't you think that that's different than if he knew that it was blatantly false, that they had evidence conversely to say that.
You mean like it would happen today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually going in and saying, I knew that this was a mistake. We had evidence to show that this wasn't happening, yet we did it anyway. That's different. And how could you live with yourself?
I think Colin Powell was not a man on the political side that would have backed a war based on a lie.
I agree with that.
Simply because that would result in political gain for his party, which is what that was about. And then I don't think he would. Now I struggle to think of a Republican politician who would give a shit, who would, it appears that they will gladly engage with any lie on the political stage, that as long as they think it results in an increase or maintenance of Republican power at either the state or federal level. And I think it's disgusting.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
What about a guy like Rand Paul? Is he a Republican or is he an independent?
He's a libertarian.
He is, right? Because he's one guy I can think of, like him or not, he's one guy that I don't think would go along with a war rhetoric without proof.
No, I don't know. He's so full of shit and tells so many lies already. I'm not sure he could fit in another one, right? I mean, and he's the son of possibly your Messiah, right? Ron Paul,
yeah,
right. So he is a Republican.
Why is he my Messiah?
Well, Ron Paul is the father of libertarianism.
But he's a full doomsday prepper too.
I don't know. Is he dead? Isn't he dead?
I don't think so.
Ron Paul?
No, he's selling doomsday books.
Is he?
Yeah.
Doomsday prepper. Well, he's the father of libertarian political.
Let me ask you this:
He ran for president?
Do we want to throw out any good idea, despite all the bad ideas that come from stupid or bad people? Like I used this example the other day with someone. Okay, you're going to caution me when I say this, but if Hitler. Who everybody knows, yes. If Hitler created the cure for cancer, would we not use that cure for cancer today because it came from Hitler? Is that where we're at? Where we're identifying, everything that comes from a person as bad because of the source because of where it came from? I mean, is that where we are?
Wow, that is an incredibly crazy question.
It is. That's the fun of the podcast. Why not?
Well,
it's so crazy that I can say it because it has no basis in fact or truth. But you know what I mean.
I see so many ways to get in trouble here. I think if we were aware of a cure for cancer, I don't know that the origin of that knowledge would be would be enough to cause us to know. I get what you're saying.
Like I get changing the name or saying it didn't come from Hitler, but you'd still use it if it worked.
Well, I mean, wow.
Did I stump you this morning?
Yeah, that's more than I feel like brain fog for that question. I have to think. It's funny. It's not funny because we just passed another milestone, or some kind of day. It was like, what's it? Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
It was like day before yesterday or something. Plus, we just experienced a hostage situation in a synagogue recently that, thank God, only resulted in the death of the perpetrator. But obviously, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and it's sad to me that this far down the line, 77 some odd years after the closure of Auschwitz, that we are still dealing with stuff like that. And I'm not Jewish, but I feel terrible for American Jews, especially ones that had come here as a result of the Holocaust or after the Holocaust, or who are second generation children with parents that had lived through that now don't feel safe here anymore. Like they once said that we'll never have to worry about feeling unsafe simply because we're Jewish, simply because we're in a synagogue. So it's just sad. And it is more evidence of the result of the anti-Semitism, the racism, and the nonsense that we're allowing to slowly creep into the mainstream thoughts, right? And a lot of it, some really disturbing statistics, and I don't have it. I can't remember the whole thing, but a surprising amount of Gen Zers and millennials apparently have little to no knowledge of the Holocaust.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was reading something, and there's a lot of debate going on about information that is taught in schools, and the most high-profile one is around critical race theory, and
which doesn't even exist, man.
I'm using that term because that's what it's coined, and everybody knows that. And the history of slavery and the history of the founding of this country. That's the big one that you hear. But there's other stuff in schools. We might have talked about, Dr. Seuss, some of his books being removed, and you can continue to peel back the onion to find these stories. One that I just read about was information about the Holocaust and how little maybe that is being taught anymore in schools. And I forget at what age or grade you learn certain things. Like, how it used to be this grade you learn American history, and then you go to U.S. or world history and so on and so forth. I forget the age groups, but the point is, that information is being stripped down, and that speaks to what you just said, that generations, large groups of people have, no knowledge of important moments in history. And like we always say, what's the adage? If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. I think all these things are so important to teach, even if they're uncomfortable, and that's the point. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with talking about uncomfortable, touchy subjects and making people feel. I don't want you to feel good all the time. I don't like watching movies that always have a happy ending. You have to feel and hurt and cry and be motivated to maybe do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you hear the criticism you hear from the right, mostly about critical race theory, about teaching it or not teaching or whatever, the funny part is that there has actually been some state legislation that speaks to it in states that don't teach it to begin with. Governor, the guy Youngton, the guy that just the far right guy that just won a gubernatorial race in Virginia or something like that, Tennessee, wherever the fuck it was, and he tried to distance himself from Trump, but then turns out in 10 weeks to be more Trump than anybody thought. And a lot of this is going on in his state right now, which is why it's kind of been in the news. And he has supported in the state legislature there has passed some kind of shit about critical race theory thing. But here's the thing. You nailed it in what you were saying a minute ago. It's not really about critical race theory. It's not really about the Holocaust. It's about the right does not want to teach their children anything about, they don't want to teach their children about things that have historical things that have happened that will make them feel uncomfortable because they're white. And this is a problem, right? They all children, no matter what their race is, need to learn about these things for the reason you cited. If you don't learn this stuff, you're much more likely to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And so the fact is that the far right has become extremely uncomfortable with the idea of teaching their children true historical information about any things in the past that make them feel uncomfortable, such as slavery, which was perpetrated by whites on blacks, such as the Holocaust, which was perpetrated by Uber-Aryans on the far right against Jews and all people of color. It wasn't just the Jews. I mean, they certainly took the brunt of it. But,
yeah, largely.
Yeah. So I mean, this isn't. Those two things are the same thing, and the lack. And when you get down to it, and you say, "Well, that's just the fringe," and nobody really cares what they think about it. But then when you look at the statistics and find out that members of the younger generations, whatever you call them, Gen Xers or millennials, are at this point have little to no knowledge of either of those things.
What do you know about the makeup of some of the hate groups in this country, whether it's Proud Boys or any of these other organizations? Do they fall into the demographic of the Gen Zers or whatever the group is that you cited that is not really aware of these atrocities in history?
Well, I don't know.
I wonder if there's a correlation there.
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you're talking about, and I don't even really, Gen Z or millennial, I don't know what the ages are for those.
Well,
things.
millennial would be older than Gen Zs.
Right. So let's just say everybody between 20 and 40. And I don't know, there maybe millennials are 40 now. I have no idea. But I would say that when you're talking about teenage to 30, if the people from that age group that are drift into these racist, white supremacy groups, which is all Oath Keepers or any of them are, they're lost people, looking for someplace to belong. They're outsiders that just don't feel part of the norm. I mean, they're losers in general, right? They're not they are not garnering members of well-adjusted white kids, right? So you have it's just a place where all the people that kind of get left behind end up going. It's one of the places, right? And then as far as, when you see Oath Keepers and stuff on TV, they're not particularly young.
What do you remember about your education and the information you were taught about slavery and American history, broadly speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that when I was in about sixth grade, I think is when we learned about slavery and, the Civil War and slavery in America.
That's 11, 12 years old?
A little younger, probably. Right, than that. I don't know. You probably know better than me.
I think that, nowadays, but was it always that way?
Yeah.
Like in the 19...
would have been the 60s. So I was born in 56. So in 66, I was 10. So, so 67, I was 11. And 68, I was 12. So, the Summer of Love, 69, I was 13. So, it was
you
just
missed out
always
on the love.
just a little too young.
Were you aware of it?
I was aware of it because I wanted to be part of it, right? I wanted to be at Woodstock. I wanted to be part of the counterculture, right?
You were kind of, at that age, were you buying your own music or not? Did you have allowance money to do that? Or
yeah, I think I was at that age. My record acquisition started kind of interesting. I did have allowance and I did my mother used to buy 45s for me. So I have a pretty big 45 collection that they're all tore up. I mean, I played the hell out of them, right? And that was all pop music stuff, right? Rock and roll, Beatles, Monkees, whatever. There was a lot of weird stuff on there. Then, got a little bit older and albums, I got about $3 a week and albums cost $3. So I was buying about an album a week. But then right in that age range there, right around 11 or 12, I think that my mother put me in something called the Columbia Record Club. So I started to acquire more records by mail, right? And that was interesting. So I got a bunch of records from that I didn't depend on my allowance because she paid for it. So I could also buy records.
It was mostly shitty music anyway. Because they had programs like that all the way up to when I was a kid.
I got a lot of stuff from that. There were sampler albums which were valuable to me because they were stereo LPs that had a wide variety of music on it, all Columbia artists and stuff like that. And then there were those. But I remember some of the specific albums and music that I got exposed to, like through the Columbia Record Club. I got the Big Brother and the Holding Company album with Janis Joplin recorded live in San Francisco, right? Big Brother and Holding Company with her most famous, recordings on it. Sly and the Family Stone. It wasn't being played on my AM radio station, right? Came to me, both of those particular albums. So one of the early Sly and the Family Stone albums and that Big Brother and Holding Company album, those albums came automatically, and I didn't send them back.
You didn't know what you were getting.
We almost never sent them back, right? Yeah. And so they were there, so they eventually got played. So I eventually got exposed to them. So like, I'm a huge Sly and the Family Stone, which is funk music, right? Which is not one of my favorite genres, but that was it. I didn't go on. It was all rock and roll for me. It was all rock, and hard rock is really what I wanted. So Sly and the Family Stone was kind of on the edge of that. It was really funk, but really the extension of that would have been George Clinton and the Funkadelics and things like that, which I didn't move into. So it's interesting. So I'm grateful for all that. My exposure to music was pretty wide ranging. And then all of the Beatles, all of the Monkees, all of that stuff, right?
Well, to tie this music conversation into this rabbit hole of race and history and teachings in America, one thing that I think has helped is hip hop music, because there's so many, from probably the late '90s forward, that genre kind of crossed over, and there's to white kids is what I'm saying. There's so many, white kids who have grown up that have to be part of that Gen. Would you say Z? Y?
Gen Z, yeah.
That I think have grown up on hip hop music, and conversely on the other side, we got to get rid of country music, because that's where all the Southern hicks live on their country music.
Country music just never worked for me.
Me either.
So,
oh my God, it's so dull.
So I'm sure I can think of several specific listeners that I know about that I'm sure love country music, and I'm not really here to disparage it when we're there.
But it
that
doesn't
speak to me, and neither does hip hop particularly. So I never.
But the cool thing about hip hop, I guess, and I'm not a music expert, but music in general, and all the way back to the stuff you were listening to when you were a kid, and the evolution of rock and roll, and the stuff that we now call classic rock. You can
more music by dead guys.
You hear the influence and the evolution in the music, whether it's jazz. Like I was into drumming, so there's a lot of jazz drumming that I like. Whether it's guys like Jimi Hendrix, who figured out how to turn his guitar upside down so he could play left-handed. All the shit that is kind of cool that you can look back on musically. But country music is the same fucking twang, and the Dallas Raines fake accent that we were talking about earlier. It's like, does everybody sing like that drawl, when you sing? I can't stand it.
The closest thing for me to country music is I did develop an appreciation for, it's got a couple of names, so bluegrass or roots music. So one of my favorite albums of all time is an album named Raising Sand. It's Robert Plant, and oh my God,
two Robert Plant references in a row, 2 weeks in a row.
Is it? It's Robert Plant and the all-time most famous female bluegrass singer. Oh Jesus, I can't think of her name. It won Grammy that the year it came out for best album. They've recently done.
Oh, is it recently? Right, Alison Krauss.
Alison Krauss.
Yeah,
right. So, Raising Sand specifically, one of the greatest albums I've ever listened to. Fantastic work for one of my past, hard rock favorites, and then of course Alison Krauss. Just gorgeous between the singing and especially the singing and of course the violin playing.
They've collaborated a lot, I think.
Yeah, they've done a few things. They have just recently dropped their second collaboration. And I haven't listened to it extensively, but what I've heard is good. And Raising Sand is just one of those albums. It's funny. I just tangentially became aware of it at the time it dropped. Watched the Grammys that year, got it. And I listened to it a lot, but I still listen to the hardest hard rock I can find. I listen to a lot of Godsmack, stuff like that, Metallica. although it's funny, I had an interesting experience. I went to a Metallica concert. I've never been to a Godsmack concert, but I went to a Metallica concert at the Pond, at the Arrow, whatever you call it now, the Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Honda Center. Anyway, they had 2 opening acts, which is, I mean, that used to be the way. Well, here's the thing. By the time I had to actually leave in the middle of the Metallica set.
Because you had to pee?
Because I just couldn't take it anymore.
How long ago was this?
6 years ago, 7 years ago. And here's the thing, because we had to sit through, I got there early. I want to get there for all the bands. So the first 2 bands were Metallica clones. So by the time we got to Metallica, I had all of that I could take, and I just couldn't.
Did you have good seats?
Yeah, there were decent seats, but I just told David, "Go, hey, listen, can we go? My head is starting to hurt," and so that's never happened before. I never left a concert before, but
but you were already in your 60s at that time.
Yeah, well, I wasn't.
You said it was a few years ago.
Yeah, it was. Well, 6 or 7 years ago, I wasn't in my 60s.
Oh, all right.
But it was a weird thing. I think. I'm not sure, there was something else going. I can't remember if I didn't feel that good to begin with or something. Anyway, I've always regretted that, I didn't get there just to see the Metallica set, right? That would have been fine. I would have got through their 45 minutes or hour and a half of music or something.
But your whole youth of seeing music, that was, I'm assuming, the way that it was, right? Because that was how bands largely became known, is that you would be friends with a band, they'd take you on tour, you'd open up, and then if you had success, then you would kind of grow from there.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a huge Rush fan.
Yeah. I saw Rush not too long ago.
Yeah. I've seen him a bunch of times. Yeah. And back in the day, he's gone now.
Yes. Did he die?
He died, yeah. Oh, I think last year.
I think I did hear that.
But they always cite that their big break came from Kiss, because Kiss took him out on the road multiple times.
Really?
But as I think in the last... Well, probably since early 2000s, Rush would go out just by themselves. No opening act, 3-hour show.
Yeah. Well, and that would be okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Metallica was probably pushing 2.5 hour show. I think I sat through an hour and a half of it before I said, hey, gotta go. Because by then it had been like 4 hours of this, and it really just was. So here's the thing, too. I mean, I've seen Black Sabbath. I saw Grand Funk Railroad. I've seen, all the bands. I saw Jimi Hendrix. I saw, Led Zeppelin. I mean, here's the technology now. The music is louder than it ever was, and
you're also older.
Well, and I think I might have been relatively close for the Metallica thing. So. All in all, yeah, and I'm older, right? It just physically, my head was starting to hurt, and so there was a lot. It was disappointing, But I did see AC/DC a few years before that, and I was like, okay, so I had never been a huge AC/DC fan, and I always thought of it as like really some of the hardest rock, But wow, it was like one of the best concerts ever. That was when
you were seeing rock shows, like the Pond didn't exist like when you were young.
I saw a lot of stuff at the Forum.
Like the Forum is a really cool place, but like old rock and roll, they bring like their stacks of their amps, like just a wall of amps, like an AC/DC, right, or an Iron Maiden, just a wall of amps, and then they're piping into the PA system of the arena.
Well, the PA systems have evolved over the years.
Yeah,
and it just has a lot to do with where you see it too. Stacks of amps on a stage that are not going through PAs is different, right? And it's never going to be as loud, no matter how big it was, right?
And that's probably what you were used to.
Well, I mean, I find myself when I can perceive that most of the sound is coming out of the PA hanging out of the ceiling in front of me. I don't enjoy that as much as if I feel like the music's coming off the stage from the actual amps.
Right.
It all gets smooshed. I mean, it just depends on the place. To be honest with you, the Honda Center just doesn't have the best sound.
No, it doesn't.
Sports arenas. So if you want really good sound, you want to go to a theater. right? Like
the Forum sounds decent, I think.
Who knows? I mean, I saw a lot of stuff there in the nosebleed section. I mean, I could literally touch the ceiling when I saw, I saw Three Dog Night there. I saw the Rolling Stones there. I saw Stevie Wonder there. I mean, I can't even name all the bands that I saw there. Hendrix, that's where I saw Sabbath and Grand Funk Railroad. I saw Sabbath from directly behind this, or I saw Grand Funk Railroad from directly behind the stage. It was a ticket I got that afternoon, and they don't even put people behind the stage anymore, typically, right?
No, I don't think so.
That was a crazy thing. All the places, I've seen it in a lot of places. I had really lucked out. I saw Santana 3 or 4 times at the Greek Theater. I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan 3 times, twice at the Greek, once at the Wiltern. I've seen Joe Bonamassa at a variety of theaters. One of the best is the Saban, which is a converted, used to be the Wilshire Theater, the Wilshire Fox, and now it's called the Saban. But it's converted into a music thing.
Would you take shitty seats at an indoor theater over good seats at an outdoor theater?
Outdoor theater,
or outdoor arena, like the Rose Bowl.
I didn't go to many shows.
Hollywood Bowl.
In those. I've really never been to an arena show of that type. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've never been to the Rose Bowl or or any other outdoor arena thing for a show. I mean, of any consequence. I've been to some, I went to a couple of quasi, not music festivals, but outdoor. I think I saw one time I went to I can't even remember where it was. It was an outdoor thing with no seats, right? And you sit on the grass or whatever. And there was Yes and Fleetwood Mac, and
you sit on the grass and make friendship bracelets.
It was people. I mean, I couldn't do it now because if you try to, like where I'm sitting, if you want to walk across my blanket or something, you end up in a hassle, So I kind of didn't like those things. I would never go anywhere without seating anymore. So I would prefer now my favorite thing is to go try to see a music act in a some kind of converted or purpose-built, music theater, right, rather than some kind of sports arena.
Mine would be on my big screen TV.
Oh, it's getting tempting. I mean, the sound is, but the sound I have at home at this stage of the game is probably better than you're going to experience in any live situation. So
without all the bullshit, the parking, the hiking in, the people.
I have no, I'm past all that, really.
Do I
even care? I don't really even care if I see another live show. The last live show I went to see was Gary, oh my God. Well, I can just,
Gary, what's he do?
He's the black guitarist.
Gary Clark.
Gary Clark.
Yeah, I remember you telling me when you saw him.
Yeah, that was
badass.
Awesome. That was at the Ford Theater. So great place to see a show. Just a great place. I mean, I think that's as big as big a venue as I really want to go to. The Greek Theater was outside. I saw a lot of bands there. I saw Jean Lupante. I've seen a bunch of bands at the Greek Theater. It was always pretty good.
Do they teach? We were talking about education prior to this tangent. They used to teach music in schools. Do they do that anymore?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't. Yeah, they do. I mean, so I have a lot of classic stories. I'm not going to bore everybody listening. Well, not everybody, but most everybody that knows me has heard every story I have. But I started taking. I wanted to learn. I was playing the drums on my own. And then at some point I was going to go into junior high school. I think. I don't know. I think it was junior high school, and I think I signed up at the end of 6th grade to take a class beginning winds and percussion, right? And so
you were pretty good at the wind part, right?
Well, I wanted to play drums, right? So I go in there, and there's 60 people in this class.
No
right?
shit.
And so it's in a music room, and then there's a separate room inside where the music teacher had an office. And so the first day he was taking people in there, and we had all signed up what instrument we wanted to play. And so I had signed up for the drums. So there's like, out of this class of 60, there's like 30 of the people signed up for drums. So he says, listen, he comes in, he hands me the mouthpiece from a trumpet. So I don't know if you're familiar. Most brass instruments have a mouthpiece that fits into the end of the instrument. And anybody can play the instrument, but you typically use your own mouthpiece. So anyway, he gives me one, it cleaned it out, wiped it off with alcohol, and gives it to me. Tells me to buzz my lips and blow into it. And I made a decent sound out of it, and kind of like a kazoo or something, right? He goes, okay, you're a trumpet player. And I'm like, no, wait. There's a misunderstanding here. I signed up to play the drums. He goes, listen. He goes, there are 30 people in this class that signed up to play the drums. And if you want me to teach you to play the drums, I will. But we're going to play as an ensemble, and on any given day, I'm only going to need 6 drummers. Everybody else that's signed up to learn drums is going to play the tuba.
But even then, at best, you were going to play a drum. A snare drum, a bass drum. You weren't going to play the drum kit.
No, these were marching. These were,
Yeah, that's not drumming. That sucks.
Well, yeah. I mean, did you ever take drum paradiddles, thumb?
Yes, of course.
So I didn't take it. I said, no, I don't want to carry tuba. So I took it, and I learned to play the trumpet, and consequently, I learned to read music, and so that was good. I continued to play the drums on my own, and right around that time, I got a trap set, and when I just teach myself.
In your music studio at home, I don't think I see a trumpet hanging on the wall.
No. So when I was 16, I was in the band. What do you go into high school at like 14 or something, right? So I went into my high school, and I got into the marching band playing trumpet. So it was like third chair trumpet or something. My parents had bought me, at that point, they bought me a pretty decent trumpet. It was a Binge. It was silver trumpet rather than brass. It was pretty sweet. They kind of outdid themselves on that. They didn't have much money for that kind of stuff. So, but I'm sure my dad was involved in that. So, that was sweet. I liked it. I played it. I played in the high school jazz band. I played in a city band. I played in a city jazz band. Playing trumpet, and I marched and all that shit. And then things happened.
Is that why you don't like walking now?
Yeah, it is part of it. And then things got, and I decided I didn't want to play in the school band anymore. I didn't like the way it was being run. I didn't like it. And so, I had a private trumpet teacher too that I took lessons from outside of school. And, he was a cool guy. You couldn't give him no shit. He's a trumpet player with a hair lip, right? So it's like when you go to complain about how your lips hurt or something, and you look at it, you see he had a big mustache that kind of covered the hair lip, but still you knew it was there. So it was kind of like, I can't complain to this guy because he plays trumpet. He played professionally. He played in Vegas and stuff too. So anyway, I sold the trumpet when I was disaffected with the band. I didn't want to do it anymore. I got out of band. That was easy to do. Went into some kind of weird co-ed volleyball class, which I ended up teaching, if you can believe that. And where they stuck there were a bunch of people that left band. And so those of us who left band had been in band, had never had PE, right? So none of that. So then we have to take, you're not in band, you have to take PE. It was like a state law or something. And so at the same time, I got my driver's license. And so I sold the trumpet once I didn't want to play it anymore for $300 and paid my second year of insurance.
$300 is a lot of money back then
for the trumpet.
Yeah,
it was an expensive trumpet.
No shit.
And I used that money to pay my insurance, my car insurance, which was much more important to me than playing the trumpet. But at that point, I was, I played the drums the whole time through it, right? And then many years later, probably around 1980-ish or something, my mother bought a Casio mini keyboard as a Christmas present for me, more as a toy. And so I got a hold of that thing. I never took any lessons for that. So it didn't take me long to figure out which keys were which notes. I had learned to read music by playing the trumpet. And so then I was able to get music and play the chords. So you look at the guitar chord, figure out the whatever, it's an A. So you figure out that A chord, what the root is, and then you can play the chords and sing along or do whatever. So I started playing that until I mean, I played it so much I broke one of the keys on it. I used to just plug it into a stereo. I had a stereo jack on the back, so same place you plug your headphones, just plugged it in. And then not long after that, probably around 81, 82, I probably bought a Roland keyboard with a floppy disk, so you could actually do some. It's called a workstation. So I still have it, still works. And then a few years later, I bought a Korg, which is a pretty large synthesizer. And then in my music, I have an electronic drum kit. So but I am really feeling the itch to break out all of my acoustic drums, but I'll need to set them up in the front room.
We got space in the back here. You can set them up back over here.
We can jam. Set them up.
Well, speaking of music, are you following this story? It involves one of your least favorite people and a musical legend.
Donald Trump?
No, the Joe Rogan, Neil Young controversy. Have you heard this story?
Wow, you know what's funny, because I thought about this on the way down here, whether we're going to talk about this, and I've never listened to Joe Rogan. What little I've heard,
you've formed an opinion.
Yeah, I don't like him. I don't.
I've been having this conversation a lot in my house lately, mostly around food, about what food the children have already declared they don't like, and I have to now say, well, how do you know you don't like it? Or you love chicken nuggets, right? Yes. Well, before you ever had a chicken nugget, did you know you were going to like it? And my daughter knew I trapped her when I said that. She goes, fine, I'll try this.
That's so funny. Yeah, so I mean, I had decided not to bring it up and not to talk about Joe Rogan. And I still really don't feel that comfortable talking
Well, let's talk about Neil Young.
Yeah, because Neil Young I do know a lot about. I think Neil, once again, much as he did, and it was forever cast in stone in the Leonard Skinner song, Sweet Home Alabama. Oh, Neil Young, we don't need you around anyhow. Yeah, I mean, I think Neil at this stage of the game is over. He apparently does 6 million downloads a month or something like that, some incredible number for any musician, which I find it's just, I don't know. I almost never listen to him anymore, and when I do listen to him, it's not new stuff. So,
yeah. But that download number would be that's a revolving number, right? That would be just people listening to whatever his catalog is on,
I guess,
Spotify,
and it's big. So
yeah.
And I don't use Spotify. You know, I do all of my online music stuff through Apple Music. So I think that he has overestimated his value to people in general. I mean, this is a way to protest Joe Rogan's apparent COVID vaccination misinformation. And what I have heard and have not been able to personally substantiate is that he says a lot of shit about COVID vaccines that is wrong.
But here's the thing.
And he has guests on that he has guests on that put out a lot of this misinformation. He apparently does not hold their feet to the fire the way he does with other guests regarding other subjects. So it's making people say that he is actively promoting vaccine misinformation, which I don't like. But I mean, what do I think of Neil Young pulling his music off Spotify? Apparently Spotify said, hey, we'll see you.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
Let us know.
And someone who listens to Joe Rogan, I don't listen to every episode, of course, but I like Joe Rogan. I listen to him. But this whole thing is fucking stupid because, first of all, Neil Young, he draws a line in the sand and says, you must fire Joe Rogan. And if you don't, pick him or me, rather than just saying
you can have Joe, you can have Rogan, you can have Young, but you can't have both.
Yes.
That's what he said. That's his
right.
quote.
But what he should have said is, like, who the fuck is he to demand Spotify to do anything? He should have just said, hey, Spotify, in light of the fact that you host Joe Rogan and I don't like what he's saying, I'm no longer I'm not going to license my music to you anymore. Like, don't make Spotify choose. He should have just had the balls to say, I'm pulling my catalog.
Well, I mean, that's what he did anyway.
They pulled it because they didn't.
No, he told them to take his shit off.
He never should have put them in the middle of it.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, I think it's an ineffective way to protest that. I mean, Neil Young is not particularly famous for. I mean, he's always been a little bit of a, activist and this and that, but and some of the hills he's chose to die on are a little bit. I mean, music quality and stuff. Like I mean, it's funny after all these years that he's even on Spotify because
he was an anti-Napster guy. If I remember.
Well, he was anti MP3, but the formats have changed and the fidelity is greater, but it's not anywhere close to what he thought it should be. But whatever, I mean, that was his thing. His opinion, he was entitled to it. And I think he's famous enough that if he wanted to come out publicly and tell people that he thought Joe Rogan was, wrong and terrible for saying those things, he could just do it.
But here's the other thing. This is what surprised me about a guy like Neil Young, who...
Well, he's getting...
But wasn't he always kind of like, the anti-war era of going against the mainstream media and challenging the mainstream rhetoric? And so my point to all that is, and you haven't listened to Joe Rogan, so we don't need to debate that, but the point is this. Even if there is legitimate, quote-unquote, misinformation, the best way to combat that is with truthful information, not silencing people, not silencing the media, not silencing books, not silencing voices.
Write a song about it and put it on Spotify. I mean, really, doesn't that seem like the more appropriate way for him to respond to something like that? I mean, he's not particularly... Well, he's not really particularly known for espousing his points of view on things. I mean, we've heard him on various things, but it's always been through music that he's made the political points that he's made over the years, and the
and he's always been kind of the outcast, right?
Oh,
was he ever really part of Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young? I mean, come on, are you a hanger-oner or what?
Yeah, so I mean, he's been a huge, musical influence, and that part of it, I don't, and none of this detracts from that for me. I'm just sad to see a story in the media about him going up against a thoroughly modern, worthless, a guy like Joe Rogan.
He's not, though. The truth is, he is the new king of all media. That term was coined by Howard Stern for many, many years. But the point about Rogan, and I can tell you from the things that I've listened to, is the comments you made about not pushing back. That's not what it's about. Like, most of his podcast is one-on-one interviews, long form. So, you and I do a similar format, but it's you and I every week versus a guest. So he's got guests in there that are making claims. Who is he to challenge that? It's the guest saying those words. And a lot of times, and most recently, he's had guests who are doctors in various fields that are related to COVID.
No.
They are. Absolutely.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
And let those guys
just because you're a
hang
doctor,
on their own words.
Just because you're a doctor doesn't make you any kind of expert on COVID.
But if you're a doctor, what is the field again that virologists or whatever the hell they are?
Well, I mean, there are multiple fields. So
I understand.
If you're not,
it doesn't also make them right.
If
even
you're
if you're
not
an expert
what
in that
Fauci
field.
is, then you're not really an authority on anything.
But some of these guys
related.
have been, and they've said things contrary to what Fauci said.
I can only tell you what I've heard.
I know
he has guests on, and when he disagrees with whatever point they're espousing, he goes at them much harder. And when he has had people with misinformation on his show regarding COVID, he has softballed it with them, and that makes people think that.
But that may be because he agrees with them, and that's okay. But I can tell you there are other times, like another name.
It's not okay if you agree.
Why not?
Okay if you agree someone who is purposely putting out misinformation about COVID.
Again, why does...
Well, I'm going to tell you that Fauci would be the one that makes that decision about what is correct and what isn't.
But what is not debatable, like, for example, if somebody says, hey, I won't take the vaccine. You and I have strong opinions about that. We've talked about it a lot. We're both vaccinated. But if somebody says, I won't take the vaccine, there's nothing to dispute. That's that person's statement. You can disagree with it, but why? But the reason why I don't
think that's who he's had on, right?
He has. Oh, absolutely.
So he's had people on to say, I won't take the vaccine. That's not much.
And he is unvaccinated, and he's anti-vax, if you want to call it that.
So he's an idiot.
Perhaps, but the point is that why is that like all of a sudden so earth-shattering that he's so dangerous because this is one man's opinion? It's because of his influence.
I don't think he's I don't think he's significant at all, to be honest with you. I mean, I get that he's popular right now and he has monetized his podcast thing, but in the scope of things, his opinions will not have a shred of influence on anything in the long run.
And if that's true, why are people so upset about it? Like, who was it? Somebody else. It was
only Neil is upset.
No, there was somebody in the U.S. government. I got to give you the person's name and position. I think it was the Surgeon General who came out and said we need to censor Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: when you're talking about public health matters and you have someone who has a high-profile position in media, one way or the other, lying about something, those are the kind of reactions you're going to get from people.
Yes, I understand all that, up to the point of taking action. Like, you should never censor people. If that person or that forum, I know you're not saying this.
I'm not.
If they have such a huge influence, come out with a bigger influence and say why it's wrong.
Well, I think that I mean, I'm not aware of the Surgeon General, but I know who you're talking about. I know who he is. I think that's probably. I mean, I think as soon as you come out and say, "Hey, he should," if that's what he said, that he should be censored. I think that's. I don't agree with that. I mean, if those are the actual words, the terminology he used.
He called on big tech to censor Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, that's different. Right, that's different. If you have a government official that has come out saying somehow the government should censor Joe Rogan, that's completely wrong. I think that it's perfectly fine for anybody to suggest that what'd you call it? Big tech?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine. I think it's fine for someone to suggest that big tech has a responsibility to take down misinformation, especially regarding public health issues, off of their platforms. And, I think it's fine with me if he suggests that. I don't think Joe Rogan is worth any of that, right? So just doing that. Here's the thing: if you want to have a negative of, how do I say this? If you just let somebody that's misguided like Joe Rogan, I'll try to stay away from the personal attacks, as I can tell you like him as a personality.
Well, I've never met him. I don't know him.
Right? No, but I mean, you like him as a media personality. That's fine. I just think that if you want to minimize his effect, don't say shit like that, because let's say that was to happen. If he was to be deplatformed or something over this, you just make it more important than it needs to be. He really has,
and that's my point.
He has no gravitas. Nobody thinks Joe Rogan is an expert on anything.
Well, isn't that the point? And I like to think I'm consistent in my arguments on various topics, and why I've said things like Trump. You got to go soon, yeah? Why I've said things about Trump and silencing him is, let him hang himself. Let him say what he wants to say. I totally support the right of, if Spotify wanted to cancel Joe Rogan, Twitter kicks Trump off their platform. Well, it's a private entity. They have every right to do that.
I totally think that.
But you shouldn't do it.
I'm totally in agreement.
We shouldn't root for people who do it.
I'm totally in agreement with any form of deplatforming Donald Trump, because he is a dangerous piece of shit. But Rogan is not. He's just, I think he's probably an idiot, but he's not dangerous, and he has no gravitas.
But the danger is that it could morph into that.
He's gonna be gone.
But that's the accusation.
Even remember in 10 years.
That remains to be seen. Who knows?
Nobody will remember his name.
Perhaps
unless you somehow make him into a martyr.
Well, listen, that remains to be seen, and perhaps you're right. But the point is this: we should never root for anybody to be silenced. We should root for people who are proven wrong, because the truth is more powerful than the lie, but we should never root for people to be silenced. That's what bugs the fuck out of me.
Yeah, I'm not rooting for Joe Rogan to be silenced.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Not really on, and I know it's a hard one, not really on, I just have forgotten his name already, Neil Young's side on this, right? So, I mean, I would just like Neil Young to make his music and stay out of the rest of it. I
would like that, and for Neil Young to not make music anymore.
Well, that's fine.
Is his new stuff even any better?
you know, it all, I mean, it doesn't, you know, the stuff that I do listen to from him, some of his older stuff, and of course his collaborations with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I mean, that's all really good stuff, right? But, you know, that was a different time and place, and I think that I have no knowledge that his musical skills have declined in any way, but I haven't heard him say anything I particularly care about one way or the other in quite a long time, in public or in song. So I think, you know, it's just a little bit sad because such a huge musical influence does become irrelevant at some point, you know, after a while. So yeah, I've always found him to be an unusual case, you know, and as he's turned into this really weird old guy.
What's his lyric? Isn't it? It's better to something
it's
fade
better
away.
To
fade away
than rust or something.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, that was a great song. I mean,
right.
Very prophetic in its own thing. He should just sort of fade away.
Exactly, he's rusting.
All right, so unfortunately,
you got to go.
I have a scheduling conflict. So, hey, good to talk to everybody, and good to see you, Travis.
Good to see you, Dr. Watkins. Okay. Until next time, everybody.
All right, bye.